The air tasted like oak smoke and sweat. It was Thursday in Austin, 10:40, 2 p.m., and the heat was suffocating. My hand smelt like pepper when my phone buzzed, dragging me back to the start. After I refused to sign my brother's $55,000 truck loan, my entire family gave me the silent treatment for 8 months. No calls. Then Dad's transmission died. He called. "I need $4,000 by Friday." I said, "Sorry, I don't talk to strangers." And the line went dead. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. The phone felt heavy, like a lead brick I had carried for nearly a year. The kitchen was winding down. Line cooks were scraping flat tops, metal shrieking against metal, but the sound felt miles away. I looked through the pass to the booth where Noah sat alone. 6-year-old had his dinosaur hoodie zipped to his chin, headphones on, counting the ribs on his plate like they were the only things that made sense. That call wasn't just a request for cash. It was a test. Seeing Dad on my screen sent a jolt of electricity straight down my spine. I hadn't heard his voice since the blowout, and for a split second, I hoped he was calling to apologize. Maybe he wanted to ask about his grandson. But the moment I answered, hope evaporated. His voice was tight and demanding, cutting through the kitchen noise with the entitlement of a man who had never truly been told no. My mouth tasted like flour. I leaned against the prep table, trying to steady my breathing. For 8 months, they pretended I didn't exist. They missed Christmas. They missed Noah's birthday. They blocked me on social media while posting pictures of barbecues I wasn't invited to. Now, he needed a transmission, and suddenly I was a son again. The audacity made my stomach turn. I looked at the dirty tickets. I wasn't just a chef tonight. I was the bank, and the bank was closed. Noah looked up. He must have felt the shift in energy, because he slid one ear cup off his head. His eyes were wide, scanning my face for danger. He had learned to read the room too young, a skill picked up from living in my parents' house. He saw me gripping the counter, knuckles white, and froze. He didn't ask what was wrong. He waited, making himself small. It broke my heart to see him so careful. He deserved a father who wasn't haunted. I forced a smile for him, but it felt brittle. I shoved the phone into my apron pocket, wishing I could throw it into the fryer instead. The smell of pepper and grease seemed to stick to my skin, heavy and cloying. That conversation had opened a door I thought I had welded shut. The silence was over, but the war was just starting. As I walked toward my son, the kitchen faded, and I was pulled back to the driveway where this nightmare began. It started 8 months ago on a humid Saturday. Mom had texted us to come for dinner, promising Noah's favorite brisket. We pulled up to the homestead in San Antonio, the gravel popping loudly under my tires. But something was wrong immediately. Taking up half the driveway was a monster. It was a brand new Chevy Silverado, lifted high enough to crush a sedan, with dealer tags still fluttering in the wind. Noah pressed his face against the glass, eyes wide. "Is that Uncle Nate's?" Noah whispered, pure awe in his voice. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. It shouldn't be. Nate was broke, living in the guest room, and drowning in bad decisions. We walked inside, the air heavy with the smell of slow, cooked meat and old secrets. Mom had the good china out. That was the second warning. The good plates always meant they wanted something expensive. Dad sat in his recliner, smiling like a shark. We barely made it through the salad before the trap snapped shut. Nate leaned forward, tapping a manicured finger on the table. He started talking fast about hauling contracts and landscaping gigs. "It's an investment, bro," he said, gesturing toward the window with his fork. I just need a little help getting approved. The bank wants a co-signer with strong history. He smiled at me, the golden child waiting for his due. Mom nodded along, her eyes bright and expectant. 55 grand is a mortgage, Nate, I said, keeping my voice level. My fork scratched against the porcelain. Dad chimed in then, his voice booming across the roast. It's just a signature, Logan. Your brother has a plan this time. Don't be difficult. They framed it as a small favor, a formality. But I remembered the Camaro he totaled 5 years ago. I remembered the collections calls. I looked at Noah, eating quietly, and felt the wall go up. I can't do it, I said. The table went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the next room. Mom's smile faltered, then vanished completely. Logan, family helps family, she said, her tone dripping with disappointment. He needs this start. I put my napkin down. I am still fixing my credit from the last time I helped. I have Noah to think about. Nate scoffed, rolling his eyes like I was being dramatic. The entitlement was suffocating. Dad leaned forward, his face reddening. We already checked the numbers, he said, voice dropping low. The finance guy ran a soft pull on your profile. He said with your income, you'd push it right through. The air left my lungs. They hadn't just asked. They had shopped my identity around before I even walked in the door. They discussed my salary, my stability, and my usefulness while I was driving down I-35, thinking we were just having a family dinner. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the tile. You ran my credit, I asked, looking from Dad to Nate. That's standard, Nate mumbled, looking away. Don't be paranoid. I grabbed Noah's hand, pulling him up from his half-eaten brisket. We're leaving, I said. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You walk out now. Don't expect us to chase you. I didn't look back. That was the last time we spoke, until the transmission died. The silence didn't happen all at once. It settled like dust. For the first week, I checked my phone every hour, expecting an angry text or a guilt-tripping voicemail. I got nothing. The family group chat, usually buzzing with memes, went stone cold. I opened it once to see Nate removed Logan in gray text at the bottom. It felt petty, like high school drama, but the finality stung. My parents didn't call to scold me. They just vanished. It was a surgical removal. Social media became a window into a life I was no longer part of. My cousin posted photos from a Labor Day barbecue at the homestead. I saw Dad laughing near the grill, beer in hand. I saw Nate leaning against that shiny new Silverado, looking triumphant. They looked happy. Relieved, even. I zoomed in on the background, searching for any sign that they missed us. There was none. They had simply closed ranks. We weren't just uninvited. We were erased from the narrative. November hit us hard. Noah asked about Thanksgiving 3 times. Are we going to Grandma's? He asked, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Not this year, buddy, I said, focusing on chopping onions so he wouldn't see my face. We're making our own tradition. We ate turkey sandwiches and watched movies, just the two of us. It was peaceful, but the apartment felt too quiet. I texted Mom a picture of Noah in his holiday pajamas. The status changed to raid instantly. No reply came. Winter dragged on, gray and relentless. I threw myself into work at Copper Spur, picking up extra shifts to distract myself from the void. The money was good and my savings account grew, but the cost was high. I came home exhausted, smelling of smoke and fatigue. Noah spent more time in the corner booth with his tablet. He stopped asking about his cousins or San Antonio. He was adapting to the rejection, and that hurt far worse than the questions. March arrived, bringing Noah's 6th birthday. This was the line in the sand. I woke up with a knot in my stomach, placing my phone on the kitchen counter like a sentry. I turned the ringer up to max volume. They won't miss this, I told myself. They're mad at me, not him. Noah ate his pancakes slowly, glancing at the phone every time it buzzed. It was just a spam call. The hours ticked by, agonizingly slow. The sun began to set. By dinner, the truth was undeniable. Noah sat before his small cake, candles melting onto the icing. "Did Grandma forget what day it is?" he asked. His voice didn't crack, which broke me. He was trying to be brave. "She remembers." I lied, my throat burning. "She's just really busy." I squeezed his shoulder, feeling the small bones beneath his shirt. They were punishing a 6-year-old just to get to me. That wasn't discipline or tough love. That was pure cruelty. Later that night, I sat in the dark and opened Facebook one last time. I needed to know. I navigated to Nate's profile. He had posted a picture of the truck an hour ago. "Beast mode." The caption read. And there, in the comments, was my mother. "So proud of you and your new truck. You deserve it." She hadn't forgotten the date. She had chosen. The silence wasn't an accident, it was a weapon. I finally blocked them all. The lunch rush was fading into prep time when my phone buzzed against my hip. I wiped the stainless steel pass, expecting a vendor or maybe the school nurse. Instead, a woman's voice asked for Logan. She sounded bored and transactional. "This is Martina Chevrolet Finance," she said. "We're verifying the billing address for the account." My rag stopped moving. "I didn't buy a Chevy," I said. "No," she replied, clicking a keyboard. "But you signed for the 2024 Silverado." The kitchen noise fell away. "You are mistaken," I said, my voice tight. "I refused that loan 8 months ago." The woman's tone shifted from bored to defensive. "Sir, I have the contract in front of me. Signed the 14th of October. The date was 2 days after the disastrous dinner." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible," I snapped, loud enough that my sus chef looked up from his onions. "I wasn't there." She sighed. "Well, we have a wet signature on file next to Nathaniel's." A cold sweat broke out on my neck. "Send me the PDF," I demanded. "Right now." She started to recite a privacy policy, but I cut her off. "If you have a loan with my name on it, I have a right to see it." She hesitated, then asked for my email. I gave it to her and hung up. I walked into the walk-in cooler, needing the frigid air to stop the room from spinning. I stood on the produce, shivering. The email notification chimed like a gunshot. I opened the attachment, my fingers numb and clumsy. The document loaded slowly on the weak signal. There it was. A standard Texas vehicle purchase agreement. Nate's name was printed in the buyer box, bold and arrogant. Next to it, in the buyer section, was my information. My social security number, my old address, and a signature in blue ink that looked terrifyingly familiar. I zoomed in until the black pixels blurred into gray. It was my name, but the hand was wrong. The lines were shaky, drawn slowly rather than written with speed. The loop on the L curved backward. A habit I had abandoned years ago, to write faster on kitchen tickets. This wasn't a fresh signature. It was a copy. Slept. Someone had taken a piece of paper with my handwriting on it and carefully traced the lines onto the contract. It wasn't just fraud, it was an art project. They practiced stealing my life. Then I recognized the slant of the G. The realization hit me harder than the cold. That signature was from birthday card I gave Mom 2 years ago. The one she kept on the mantel next to the family photos. They had taken my expression of love, placed it over a predatory loan document, and traced it until it looked legal. My mother had used a happy birthday card to ruin my financial future. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was intimate. I saved the file and walked out of the cooler. The kitchen noise rushed back in. Pans searing, orders shouting. But I felt detached. My sous chef looked at me, concern etched on his face. "You good, chef?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." I gripped my phone. "I am fine," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Cover the pass. I have to go to the police station. The old Logan died in that cooler." I was just a witness now. I drove straight to the Riverside station without changing out of my chef whites. My apron still smelled of onions and kitchen grease, a sharp contrast to the sterile, gray exterior of the police precinct. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes. Slept. Gripping the cheap manila folder that contained the evidence of my betrayal. Inside were the printed contract, the screenshots of my unanswered texts, and the credit report that branded me a co-signer against my will. A pigeon pecked at a cigarette butt near the front tire, oblivious to the fact that I was about to incinerate my family tree. I took a breath that rattled in my chest, grabbed the folder, and opened the door. The lobby was fluorescent and stale, filled with the low hum of anxiety. A desk sergeant with a buzz glanced up from a computer, eyeing my stained uniform with mild suspicion. "Help you?" he asked, his voice flat. I placed the folder on the counter, my hand trembling slightly. "I need to file an identity theft report," I said. The words tasted like ash. He sighed, reaching for a clipboard. "Credit card stolen." "No," I said, my voice steadying as I looked him in the eye. "My family forged my signature on a $55,000 truck loan." The sergeant stopped moving. His expression shifted from boredom to sharp assessment. "Family," he repeated. "Yes. My father and brother." We moved to a small interview room that smelled of cleaning solution and stale coffee. Officer Miller was younger than me. Slept. But he had eyes that had seen enough lying to know I wasn't doing it. I laid out the timeline with clinical precision: the dinner, the refusal, the 8 months of silence. Then I showed him the comparison I'd made on my phone. The forged signature, next to the one from the birthday card. Miller stared at the traced Lupaville for a long time. "They traced a birthday card?" he asked, tapping the photo. "To get a lifted Silverado." I nodded. Miller shook his head, a mix of disgust and disbelief. "That's a felony, you know. Forgery. Identity theft. Fraud." Hearing a cop say, "felony," made my stomach pitch. I thought of Nate's stupid grin and my dad's pride. If I signed this statement, I wasn't just fixing my credit, I was putting handcuffs on them. For a second, the old programming kicked in. The voice that said, "Don't make a scene. Don't be difficult." Then I thought of No sitting alone at his birthday cake, while my mother praised Nate's truck on Facebook. They didn't care if I drowned, as long as they could drive to the lake. I picked up the pen. The ink flowed black and permanent. I wasn't the one making it ugly. I was just the one turning on the lights. Miller typed for a solid 10 minutes while I watched the clock on the wall tick away my former life. Finally, the printer whirred. He handed me a single sheet of paper with a stamp at the top. "Case number 20, 640, 813, he said, circling it with a red pen. "You take this to the bank, the dealership, and the credit bureaus. It stops the collections. It clears your name." I took the paper. It felt light, flimsy even, but it was the heaviest thing I'd ever held. This wasn't just paperwork. It was a shield. It was the first time in my life I had a weapon they couldn't guilt-trip away. Miller stood up, offering me a hand. "I have to warn you," he said. his tone dropping. Once we file this, the district attorney picks it up. You can't just drop charges later, because your mom calls crying. It's out of your hands. I looked at the case number again. 2640, 813. It looked like freedom. I know, I said. That's why I am doing it. I walked out into the Texas sunlight. The heat usually oppressed me, but today it felt clean. I didn't go back to the restaurant. I drove home, opened my laptop, and drafted the email that would end the silence on my terms. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, the blue light reflecting off the dark window. The email was drafted, the attachments loaded like ammunition in a chamber. The subject line read, Unauthorized activity, case number 2640, 813. It looked clinical, almost boring. For something that was about to detonate my entire family dynamic. I hit send and waited. The silence that followed was heavier than the 8 months prior. It was the silence of a fuse burning down. I watched Noah watching cartoons, his small feet propped on the coffee table. 3 hours later, my phone lit up like a slot machine in a dark room. It started with a text from Nady. Bro F. Cop calling me. Then Mom. Logan. Answer the phone. You are ruining this family. I didn't answer. I didn't even read the full messages. I watched the notifications stack up on the lock screen. Detached and cold. It was fascinating to see how quickly their silence evaporated when their comfort was threatened. They weren't ignoring me anymore. I was suddenly the center of their universe again, but only as a target. At 10 o'clock, the digital noise became physical. A heavy fist hammered against my front door, shaking the frame in its jam. The sound was violent, demanding, and immediate. Noah jumped on the couch, his eyes wide with instinctive fear. Is that the bad man? He whispered, clutching his blanket. The question cut me deep. He didn't ask if it was Grandpa. He asked if it was a threat. I stood up slowly, putting a finger to my lips. It's okay, buddy, I said softly. Go to your room and put your headphones on. I waited until Noah's bedroom door clicked shut before I approached the entrance. The pounding didn't stop. It had a rhythm I recognized from childhood. The temper tantrum of a man who believed he owned the world. I checked the peephole. The hallway light was dim, but I saw my father's face distorted by the fish-eye lens. He was red, sweating, and furious. He looked like a stranger. Not the man who taught me to ride a bike. He looked like a debt collector coming to break legs. I felt my heart harden. Open this door, Logan! He bellowed, his voice cracking with rage. I know you are in there. I didn't unlock it. I didn't even touch the handle. I pulled my phone out and hit record. Go home. Dad, I said through the wood, keeping my voice loud enough to be heard but calm enough for the recording. You are scaring my son. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Scaring him. You are the one destroying his family. You called the cops on your own brother. Over a signature. Open the damn door. I leaned my forehead against the cool metal of the door. It's not just a signature, I said. It's a felony. And I didn't call the cops. I filed a report. He slammed his hand against the wood again. You ungrateful little brat. After everything we did for you. We put a roof over your head. We fed you when you were broke. He was reciting the ledger, the mental list of obligations he thought purchased my obedience. He truly believed that feeding his child gave him the right to rob him. That debt is paid. I said, my voice dropping lower. I have a case number, Dad. The detective told me to call 911 if you showed up here harassing me. The silence on the other side was sudden and absolute. He hadn't expected me to know the rules. He thought he could bully me back into submission like he always did. You wouldn't, he hissed, his voice pressed close to the crack in the door. You wouldn't arrest your own father. I looked at the recording timer ticking away on my screen. Try me, I said. You have 5 seconds to leave before I dial. I could hear him breathing heavily on the other side. I could hear the gears turning in his head, weighing his anger against his self-preservation. He jiggled the handle one last time, violently, testing the deadbolt. The lock. It was a cheap apartment lock, but in that moment, it felt like the strongest barrier on earth. It was the physical manifestation of the boundary I should have set years ago. He realized he was powerless here. You are nothing without us, he shouted. But he was already stepping back. I could hear his boots scuffing against the concrete walkway. You'll come crawling back when you fail.
You always do.
And don't expect us to be there? The insults were fading as he walked toward the stairs. You are dead to us, Logan! You hear me? Dead. I listened, until I heard the heavy thud of the stairwell door closing. Then I heard an engine turn over in the parking lot. It wasn't the Silverado. It was his old truck coughing to life. I stopped the recording and let out a breath I had been holding for 20 years. My hands weren't shaking. That was the surprise. I expected to feel guilty, to feel the crushing weight of disappointing him. Instead, I felt light. I walked to the kitchen and drank the glass of water I had poured hours ago. It was warm now, but it tasted sweet. I checked the lock one more time. The bolt was thrown. I wasn't locked in with my fear anymore. I had finally locked them out. 2 weeks passed in a strange, quiet haze. I hired a locksmith to install a deadbolt that looked like it belonged on a bank vault. I changed my number, but only gave it to Noah's school and my boss. The silence from San Antonio wasn't peaceful. It was the heavy quiet of a held breath. I knew the legal gears were grinding. I knew the repo man was hunting Nate's truck. But without their constant noise, I started to hear my own thoughts again. It felt like waking up from a coma. Then, the inevitable mechanical failure struck. I heard through the grapevine that the Silverado was hooked and towed from Nate's driveway on a Tuesday. Dad was forced back into his 15-year-old Ford, the one he had neglected while playing rich with my credit score. It was poetic justice, engineered by rust and neglect. The transmission had been slipping for years, a known issue he refused to fix. Now, with the shiny distraction gone, reality came crashing down. The Ford finally gave up the ghost on a sweltering afternoon. I was deep in the weeds at Copper Spur when the hostess waved me down. Logan, there is a guy on line 2. Says it's urgent family business. I wiped my hands on a towel, staring at the blinking red light. My stomach didn't drop this time. It just tightened, like a fist preparing for impact. I knew who it was. He couldn't call my cell, so he found the one line I couldn't block. I picked up the receiver, pressing it against my ear. Kitchen, I said. Logan. His voice was jarringly casual. It wasn't the screaming monster from my doorstep, or the cold patriarch of the dinner table. It was his reasonable voice, the one he used to borrow money from neighbors. Hey, listen, I am in a jam. The Ford died on I-35. I am sitting on the shoulder waiting for a tow. He spoke as if the police report didn't exist. As if he hadn't disowned me 2 weeks ago. The gaslighting was so brazen it was almost impressive. He was rewriting history in real time. I didn't say anything. I just listened to the roar of traffic behind him. I had it towed to Martinez. He continued, rushing past my silence. He says the transmission is shot. I need $4,000 to get it rolling again. They want cash by Friday, or they're scrapping it. He paused, waiting for me to jump in with a solution. I know things have been weird, but I need you to wire it. Same account as before. You can do that for me, right? The request hung in the air, heavy with entitlement. He wasn't asking for a loan, he was demanding a tribute. He wanted me to fix the car he used to drive away from my apartment after screaming that I was dead to him. You want me to send $4,000? I asked, my voice flat. It's for work, Logan. He snapped, his patience fraying. If I don't get to the site, I lose the contract. You want your old man unemployed. You want Noah's grandfather on the street. There it was. Noah. The ultimate bargaining chip. He threw my son's name into the conversation like a grenade, expecting me to dive on it. But, as I looked across the kitchen, at the stainless steel counters, I realized something profound. The man on the phone didn't care about Noah. He didn't even care about me. We were just appliances to him. When the toaster breaks, you don't apologize to it, you just hit it until it works. He was hitting me now, expecting cash to pop out. I filed the identity theft affidavit, Dad, I said. The bank knows you forged my name. The police know. He scoffed, a wet, ugly sound. Oh. Stop with the drama. That's just paperwork. This is real life. I am your father. You owe me. The word ow severed the last thread connecting us. I wasn't a son to him. I was an investment account he was trying to liquidate. I gripped the phone tighter. I wasn't scared anymore. I was just done. The ledger was finally closed. I remembered the night he banged on my door. I remembered the 8 months of silence. I remembered the empty mailbox on Noah's birthday. The man on the phone wasn't family. Family protects you. Family shows up. This was just a man who shared my DNA and wanted my money. He was a grifter working a mark. Dad, I said, my voice steady and cold. I need $4,000. He shouted, desperate now.
Friday, Logan?
Do the right thing. I took a deep breath, tasting the kitchen smoke. Sorry, I said, delivering the words that would define the rest of my life. I don't talk to strangers. I didn't wait for his reaction. I didn't wait for the explosion or the begging. I gently placed the receiver back on the cradle, cutting the connection for good. The blinking light went dark. I looked at my sauce chef, who was watching me with wide eyes. Tick it up, I said, grabbing a new order. The line was moving, and, for the first time I was moving with it. 3 months later, the only thing burning was the toast, and even that was on purpose. Sunday mornings in our apartment had a rhythm now. I wasn't rushing to answer frantic texts or checking my bank account for surprise withdrawals. I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes while Noah sat on the counter, swinging his legs. The sunlight hit the linoleum floor, highlighting the dust motes dancing in the air. It was quiet, but not the heavy, punishing silence of my parents. This was the silence of peace. Noah hopped down, landing with a heavy thud that would have earned him a scolding at the homestead. Here, I just handed him the bottle of syrup. He drowned his plate in amber sugar, humming a song from a video game. His shoulders, once perpetually hunched near my father, were relaxed. He looked taller, filled out with the confidence of a kid who knows he isn't a burden. These look like moons, he said, poking a cratered pancake. He wasn't asking for permission to eat. He was just living. I made something for school. He mumbled around a mouthful. He slid a piece of construction paper across the laminate. It was a crayon portrait titled, My Family. There was a tall figure in a chef's coat. Me. Next to it was a small figure in a dinosaur hoodie. Then, surprisingly, he had drawn my sauce chef, Marcus, holding a spatula, and our neighbor, Mrs. Gable, holding her cat. I stared at the page, searching for the gaps. There were no grandparents. No Uncle Nate. The paper was full. A lump formed in my throat. But it wasn't sadness. It was relief. For years, I believed the lie that I had to buy my way into love. I thought if I sacrificed enough credit score points or dignity, they would finally see me. Noah saw me for free. "Is it okay?" he asked, pausing with his fork halfway to his mouth. "It's perfect, bud," I said, and I meant it. The drawing wasn't missing anything. It was a map of the people who actually showed up. My phone buzzed on the counter, vibrating against the sugar jar. I glanced at the screen out of habit. A news alert from a local San Antonio scanner page popped up. Local hauling business owner charged with fraud and forgery. The preview showed a pixelated mugshot that looked vaguely like the brother I used to cover for. My thumb hovered over the notification. I could click it. I could read the details, spiral into the drama, and feel the guilt they trained me to feel. The old Logan would have clicked. I swiped the notification away without unlocking the screen. The screen went black, reflecting our kitchen. "Who was that?" Noah asked, looking up from his syrup lake. "Nobody," I said, turning back to the stove to pour another circle of batter. "Just a wrong number." I wasn't a bank, a doormat, or a stranger anymore. I was a father making breakfast on a Sunday. The coffee pot hissed, finishing its brew. The air smelled like maple and freedom. We were going to be just fine.